Hello, my name's James. I'm a portrait photographer from Portsmouth down here on the south coast of England, part of the United Kingdom and Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But I understand we have lots of people, lots of attendees in this webinar tonight, and I thank you all for giving up around about 40 to 45 minutes of your time tonight to listen to me talk about photography and to talk about studio portraits. What normally happens at these things is that people log in from all around the world, which actually is an amazing thing. If I was to tell my younger self that in the early 90s, studying in a darkroom at the back end of a sixth form college in Bournemouth, that I'd be talking to people from all around the world at once, he would be very humbled by that, and I'm always humbled when I'm asked to do so. Thank you. What I invite you to do is to tell me where you're from in the world in the chat. Put where you're from in the world in the chat, and I can see if the chat's working, or if Julian can see if the chat is working from there. You should be able to see my presentation in front of you here. 101 Light Portraits. 101 Light Portraits is a project that I started this year to try and shoot exactly what it says, really. 101 light images, 100 portraits just using one light. And we wanted to take a variety of different subjects, a variety of different people, and we wanted to use this Elinchron 1 light, which I've got here, which is what I've purchased, and it's an amazing piece of kit. We're going to talk about it in a minute and talk about the fundamentals of it, but also talk about the fundamentals of lighting and how we use light as photographers, because light for photographers is our tool. For painters, it's paint. For sculptors, it's anything you can make a thing out of. But for photographers, we literally draw with light. Photography, photo light, graph to draw. Photography is what we do here. Rebecca's from Norwich. Hi, Simon from London. I'm just going to run through these. Matthew from Surrey. Hello, Matthew. Norwich is as far as we've got. Come on, we must have people further afield from Norwich. Put where you are there in the comments below. So we're going to be, look, can we just have a thumbs up? Sean from Brighton, can you give me a thumbs up to make sure that you can see my presentation before I start here? As with all of these presentations, I'm going to skip to the next slide, and I'm going to talk about myself. My name's James. Like I said, I'm a portrait photographer from Portsmouth. I run my studio down here. I used to run I've been working in photography now for 20 years, and I used to work in a really, really busy high street studio where I'd shoot sort of 9 sessions a day of various babies and families and dogs and pets and all that kind of stuff. And then I went self-employed after about 7 years of that and covered all sorts of different things, including fairly recently my project, A Portrait of a Wrestler, which got me traveling around the world and covering oily, muscled up men wrestling in rings from Las Vegas to Lewisham, which is really, really cool. And last year, working with one of the wrestlers on that project, I won the International Photographer of the Year award with the Societies of Photographers, which is still one of my most recent achievement, but it's one of my most proud achievements. And I've featured in several education inspirational films for Canon. You can find me online, just Google James Musselwhite and you'll see loads of things out there. I work mainly with strobe lights and strobe lighting. That's my fundamental sort of core asset. And for a lot of my work, I've had to shoot with just one light. This image here was taken only last week of Zoe in studio, and this is shot just with a single light in studio. The Elinchron 1 there is on the right-hand side that you can see. The thing that I like about the Elinchron 1, actually there's 3 things I really, really like about the Elinchron 1 since I've started to use it. Number 1 is that the back of the Elinchron 1 is a touch screen. So it's really, really intuitive in terms of speed of access for moving a power up or down mid-session. It's also all encased in just one unit. There's no leads, there's no batteries to clip to it. It's very, very portable, fits in a very small bag, and I can take it quite easily to any weddings or locations that I shoot. And fundamentally, it's sort of really, really useful for that. And also, it's got a very powerful LED modeling light in the front, which is you can correct for daylight adjustments. You can make it warmer and cooler, essentially. And for a quick video shoot that you need to do, if you need to do quick video lighting or you need a quick modeling bulb, it's really, really useful for that. So I found those are my three sort of fundamental things that I like about using the Elinchron one. And it's a really, really reliable light source and quick and easy to use. I used the Elinchron one for this shot earlier in the year, or late last year actually. So this is the shot that won the International Photographer of the Year. This is the shot of a friend of ours called Cassius, who's also a professional wrestler and was featured on the ITV show Gogglebox last year, which will mean a lot to the UK listeners, not so much to the international ones. The thing about this shot is that there is no Photoshop manipulation in this image at all. What you're looking at in front of you here is a raw capture, and what the Elinchron one has had to do in this instance is work with high speed flash to capture the little grains of self-raising flour in this instance that are bouncing around the frame here. We could talk about how we created this image and the concept of this image another time. We could fill up a whole hour talking about this, but I just wanted to show this to you to show you the sharpness and the speed at which this light has captured this image. It came first out of over 6,500 other images across all categories, with loads of other amazing work from all around the world, with loads of Photoshop skills, loads of digital manipulation skills, and the whole contest was won by this single image, for which it didn't even touch the side, didn't even come within 100 miles of Photoshop. We just took it and then entered the raw in the in-camera artistry category, and this was the image that won. Very proud of that. But as I alluded to earlier, my journey with one light photography really sort of flourished with my project, A Portrait of a Wrestler. Here's some images here of me working backstage at shows, and you can see they're sort of the tight spaces that we have to work to at ringside. There's an image there on the left of me sort of crouching down. There's loads of little rules in wrestling as to where you can and can't photograph from when you're working ringside, and that can make things quite difficult in terms of your creativity, because you're quite restricted in terms of where you can go. You can't, for instance, walk across the side of the ring that's facing what they call the hard cam, the stationary camera. You can't just walk across and wander across the side of that. You've got to stay out of the way because they want to see the action of what's going on in the ring. You've got to be wary of the fans around you. You've paid top dollar for front row tickets and not constantly and consistently be in their way. You have to be aware of videographers who are working ringside. Make sure you stay the side of them that isn't holding the camera, because if they've got a great big bit of gear up here on their right shoulder, they can't see you on their right hand side because they've got a giant video camera and live leads pulling everywhere. You've got to be careful if you're footing on live leads, and ultimately as well you have to be careful ringside of wrestlers throwing other wrestlers over the top rope and onto you, which has happened in the past. But also backstage, these shows, the smaller shows especially, aren't typically shot at big arenas. They're not typically shot with massive loads of space. So what we have to do is make the most of the space that we have. And you can see at the bottom image here, we've actually got a wrestler here to help hold a light for us so that we can shoot another wrestler. Basically, we've taken them out onto the street because there's 30 wrestlers changing backstage, getting ready and preparing for their matches backstage. And there's not a lot of room in those small rooms to work in. So we have to take a small portable setup that we can carry on the train, and we have to work with what we've got. So we found a graffitied wall outside and just took some promo pictures out there. We have tried to be as adaptable as we possibly can. And what that taught me was how to work with one light, because I don't want to be traveling around the country with lots of different strobes and lots of different light sources. And I want to be able to work in small spaces and still get quality results that are going to get me booked again and that are going to get me, more work. Here's two images that we shot backstage. We, in this instance, took a portable black backdrop that just basically went up against one of the walls. So one of those big portable backdrops that you can roll up into sort of like a meter wide circle. It has white on the front and black on the back. We used the black there here in this instance because it's more intrinsic with more in tune with the gritty feel of the portraits that we're trying to get, and all of the black soaks up all of the light, so it's actually easier to control than the white. And you can see there this is just a simple strobe inside a foldable softbox. And any strobe you can get, you can find adapters to work with these. These were all taken a few years back before the Elinchron 1 was released. I would be using the Elinchron 1 now. You've got a half-length portrait in a small space there on the left-hand side, and a close-up portrait there on the right-hand side of current former WWE star and now AEW star, Adam Cole. The next one here, we can once you know that you've got reliability, like we had in the previous pictures, you can see that you're getting reliable results if you're putting the light in the place that you're comfortable with and it's achieving the look and the feel that you want. Then you can start working on your creativity. Once you know all of that stuff's working, once you know what your aperture's shooting and what the power's coming out of that light and how your camera's working it, then you can start getting creative. You can work with girls like Chelsea on the left-hand side to get real good expressions and get her to come through into the camera, again using a pop-up black backdrop behind her here. And then you can actually unleash some of the high-speed flash functions of the light, as we have with Chuck Mambo on the right-hand side here, jumping off of the sofa in front of the camera here with a strobe just firing off, and that was backstage at Alexandra Palace in London. Again, once you get the reliability of the equipment behind you, then you can really start to unleash your creativity and start to shoot different things. These two one light portraits again, the one on the left here of his current actor actually, but former musicians and songwriter Scroobius Pip. This was taken just in a tiny changing room. So there's wrestlers all changing all around us. I just grabbed him for 5 seconds. Said, would you mind if I take a very quick picture of you? Simple butterfly lighting above, but we're working in a small space with we found the only bit of blue wall behind us to give us a clean backdrop. I didn't have my backdrop with me at that time, but I knew I wanted a clean backdrop. So we just position him in front of the only clean wall, use a slightly longer lens there to sort of give us that depth of field, but also make the most of the backdrop that we have. And we've got a really clean, intense portrait looking straight into the lens. The one on the right there of the former Tommy and now Alistair Black, shot backstage at the Brixton Academy, just a dark corridor. There's no other lights working in here. There's just my strobe working off of the front. And again, once you start to get the trust in these guys just before the match, then you can work with them and get some really creative pictures there. And it doesn't necessarily look like it's backstage an event. There are people that would travel the country to try and find disused warehouses to sort of shoot things like this, but I find backstage at shows is a lot simpler and a lot easier. So we're going to be looking today at the first 10 pictures from my 100 one light images. We're going to have a look at those and do a little bit of a deep dive into those and see how they were created and what techniques we use. But before we go into that, we need to discuss a little bit about the fundamentals of lighting. The fundamentals of lighting here, I can break them down in my mind, and every photographer is going to look at this differently, but in my mind there are 4 fundamentals that make up the lighting that you can create for a portrait. Number 1 is the quality of light. Number 2, the direction of light. Number 3, the power of the light. And number 4, the modification of the light. I'm just going to take a deep dive into each of these very controllable factors. This is what I like. I'm a bit of a control freak. Maybe a lot of photographers are. I don't know, maybe you get 2 different types of photographers. I'll just reflect on that a little bit. I think you do get 2 different types of photographers. You get the photographers that like to see things as they happen and try and react to them. And then you have photographers, idiot photographers like me, that like to control every aspect of a picture and achieve a result that we have inside our heads. The quality of light is the first thing I'm going to look at, and this is determined by the factors of direction, power, and modification of the light source. So the way the light's placed, where it's pointing to, what power settings you're using, and what modifier you choose to use on the front of the light source. And when I say modifier, I'm talking about things that you would put on the front of the light source, like soft boxes, like snoots, like grids, all those kind of things. They will all affect in strobe photography the quality of the light source. These variables will impact the look and feel of your portrait, as well as the settings that you need to use. So everything you change, there will always be a reaction. You are in complete control of your lighting when you're using strobes. So therefore, every action has a reaction. So where you place the light, where you angle the light, what power setting you use for the light, what modifier you're using for the light will change the look and feel of a portrait, but it'll also inevitably change the settings that you'll need to use in camera. Direction of the light, this is where the light falls, and this can have a dramatic effect on the mood of your portrait, as well as shaping the tonality of facial features. And there's lots of things we need to consider when we're shooting portraits, most specifically the eyes and the nose. The nose is great for creating sort of tonality and shadows within the image to give you either dramatic or a flat finish. The eyes, typically in portraits, is where your viewer's eye will go when they're looking at a picture. When you look at a picture, the first thing you're drawn to is the eyes. In a portrait, in a full-length portrait, it's the face and then the eyes within the face. So that's what we're really looking at controlling with our lights. When used in combination with the distance of a light, that a light is from a subject, dramatic results can be achieved in either softening skin tones or features or creating more dynamic results. The sun is a really, really good example of this in terms of the distance a light source is away from a subject. Typically, the closer a light is to a subject, the softer the light. That means the shadows are less harsh. There's more of an even graduation from highlights through to shadows. The further away, the harder it is. So for example, if you're outside on a bright sunny day with no clouds above and the sun's right up in the air, or even in the evening when it dips down, that sun is thousands, tens, hundreds, millions of miles away. Because it's that distance, you're going to get really, really harsh shadows falling behind you. That was the easiest. That was the way it was taught to me when I was younger. It's the easiest way I found of remembering it. We're looking at the power of light, number 3. The power of the light can have a dramatic effect on lighting ratios and the impact of a portrait. This can be affected by changes to the distance, direction, modification, and the direct power supply that you're actually getting to the light. So that each of these lights, and specifically the Electron run, has a range of power of which the strobe can emit flash. Controlling the power of light is key to achieving effects that are correct in camera, therefore reducing digital manipulation time later in the process. I saw this recently on one of the photography forums I'm part of, where someone had sent out an overexposed image of someone stood in a white t-shirt on a white wall and said, what do I need to do in Photoshop to save this? And really that question is, we can give answers and we can help you, but ultimately the real answer is take the time to understand the light, understand the process, and get that right in camera. I always say this about Photoshop. Photoshop can make a good image great, but it cannot make a bad image good. That's not a hard and fast rule, I know, but generally that's the way I like to think of it. Lastly, the modification of light. There is a wide range of modifiers that can be adapted to strobes to change the quality of light, from bare bulbs to scrims, snoots to octoboxes. Everyone has a purpose and everyone can be used in a variety of ways. There's no such thing as good or bad light. Light is just the tool we use to create our portraits and tell our stories. So things like rules in photography. So people will always talk to you about the rules in photography and talk to you about, one of the things, I think the first ones I remember was never shoot into the sun. I was told that when I was like 13. And people will say, always follow the rule of thirds. They'll never take the extra step of understanding why. Like understanding why someone might tell you, or you might have learned or might have been told, never shoot into the sun. Now, the fact of the matter is, if you shoot a group shot at a wedding with the sun behind you, you're going to get a bunch of people squinting back at you. So is that right or is that wrong? And if you wanted to achieve a silhouette, how could you possibly do it without shooting into your main light source? The point is understanding these rules, understanding why they're in place, and then understanding not necessarily how to break them, but how to use them to manipulate them to achieve the result that you want to achieve. And it's funny enough, the image of the groom there on the right-hand side was shot with an Electron 1 light, and it was shot shooting into the sun. And that's how we achieved the result that we got there. So we move now on to the 101 light portrait. It's going to take you through the first 10. I'm going to take you into my studio and elsewhere where we have shot these images, and I'm going to take you through how we set the lights up, a little bit about the result that we were trying to achieve, what modifiers we used, and delve into the settings just a little bit. And each of these images is of a different subject. Each of these images is of a real client. That's one of the brilliant things about this project. And being part of a working studio is that we're not setting this up with paid models to create a project. I'm literally doing it as I'm shooting with paying clients as we sort of go through the process here. So we'll talk to you a little bit about that as well and just give you an all-round feel as to how we achieve this and how useful this Electron 1 light is and how useful understanding 1 light portrait is. Disclaimer at the start though. All of these images have only been shot with one Electron 1 light. This does not necessarily mean they are all 1 light portraits. because you can mix ambient light, you can use other things. But in terms of the project, there is only one strobe in every photo. And each one of those is the Electron 1. The first one here is of Aaliyah. Aaliyah came to us looking for images to update her portfolio. We shot this image. She spent half a day with us. We had a range of different ideas in studio. And this is the first one that we shot. And we shot this image live when we actually streamed her on Instagram Live. We did a quick speed shoot with her for 5 minutes and put it out to our fans on Instagram. They loved it, and we actually managed to capture this image here. Now, this is the diagram here on the right-hand side that we can see for how this image was shot. So we have Aaliyah stood here just a meter off of a white wall backdrop, which has come up as grey in the shot, as you can see there. We've used a 70 centimeter deep octabox attached to the Electron 1 light. That is really high. It's on a sort of it's on this bayonet sort of stand here, old C-stand style, I suppose. And it's pointing above and just down to Aaliyah, and it's very slightly, as we're looking at the picture, just slightly on the right hand side, but that is hitting her hard and down, which is giving us deep shadows under the jawline, deep shadows under the nose, deep shadows under the lips, and deep shadows as we go down into the fabric of the dress, making the most of the whole picture here. Because it's pointing down, it's pointing slightly away from that white wall. So what that means is that wall is not coming out white. That wall is coming out a nice graduated grey, which has given us lovely even tones throughout the whole image, all sort of merging lovely together. We're just going to have a little closer look at this one here. So there she is. Styling on point here for this one as well, just trying to keep to those neutral tones within the image. Little bit of bling up top as well with the necklace and the earrings. My wife is my stylist in the studio here, so she works with a lot of our customers in terms of getting the right look for them and the right feel for the images. But this is a lovely, very simple one light shot. The deep octabox again is giving us these deep tones throughout the image, which I don't mind them going into black at all. I wanted a high contrast image, and we've also taken a low camera angle. So this low camera angle has given our subject more dominance and just created a really, really simple and powerful portrait. One thing before I go on to number 2, I must say, if you have any questions about any of these, pop them in the comments and we will endeavor to answer them towards the end of this presentation. Image number 2 here is of Emma. Now, Emma was shot a couple of days after Aaliyah's shoot. I was on a video shoot in Cardiff and capturing some video for another photographer for one of his video blogs. And we got to know Emma a little bit during the day, and I just said, I've got my Electron 1 in the back. Would you mind if we just shot a couple of pictures for you? She said no problem at all. That was over lunch. Then the video shoot sort of overran and everyone was running behind and we didn't have a lot of time and all the light had gone outside. So as we were all going back to our cars up in the car park, I just reminded her and said, look, if I grab it now, I'll take a quick shot of you in this car park. Always shooting for something very exotic. So we're in a car park in Cardiff here, up on the 4th floor. The light's gone completely outside. So that is actually the grid there that you see on the left is sort of, you can see Cardiff beyond that, but there isn't a lot of light there at all. So we've gone, used a nice sharp aperture, a nice sort of closed up aperture around about an f/16 to close off all of the light from there. And we just had a posed in one of the car park spaces leaning into that grid. Now, this is a simple 65 centimeter square softbox, which is just on the right of Emma as we look at her, angling slightly down. Very simple softbox. You can find it online, super cheap, because they hand it out with a lot of the kits and a lot of the entry level lights that you get. So there's a lot of these 65 centimeter soft boxes around, easy to take apart, very small to put in a car, super light as well, and easy to sort of use here. We feathered the light slightly away from her, and all that means is we've turned the light slightly towards the camera and slightly away from her face, which means that the softer light, which is coming out of the edge of the softbox, is the light that's hitting Emma's face, which is giving us less dramatic shadows than we had in the previous one. Let's just compare. Look at the dramatic shadows in the previous one of Aaliyah with a deeper softbox angled down, straight in. This one here, slightly wider softbox, less deep, less shadow, but also feathered across. There's no bounce back coming off of that grid because remember, this grid on the left-hand side has got nothing to it. It's just going straight out to open air. So all of that graduated shadow tone here from the nose and from the cheek is just coming across from the feathered light. And we look nice and close at the image here. She's got super makeup. She's a makeup artist herself. So that's another thing, less thing to worry about. My granddad used to say this to me about buying a car. He said, when you buy a car, try and buy one that doesn't have electric windows, that doesn't have security, that doesn't have this, that doesn't have that. Because if there's less of those things with it, there's less things that can go wrong with it. And he's probably right. But once you start taking away things that you have to worry about and things that potentially go wrong with images, then you start simplifying the process and making it a lot easier for you. It's just a very, very simple modeling shot, but I just wanted to showcase that one there because it was, like I say, literally shot in a car park in Wales. Image number 3 here is Hayden. We've worked a lot with Hayden in the past, and we've just come from shooting his wedding, was the last job that we had with him. We invited him for his pre-wedding consultation, and both him and his wife are both really into their fitness. So we said to them, hey, as part of your pre-wedding consultation, why don't you come in and have a little photo shoot individually and together so you can get to know us and we can get to know you. So that was all part of that process. Hayden's shot here with a panoramic softbox. So it's a 1 meter panoramic softbox, again on one of these C stands. The C stand's really useful here because I'm going to be stood, as you can see here in the drawing, I'm going to be stood there facing towards Hayden. If I have it on a normal tripod, that tripod is going to be in my way. When it's like this, the tripod's to the right hand side, over and above and pointing down. He's 5 meters away from my white wall in the studio, so I'm quite lucky I've got that much space. But by bringing him back and having this softbox angling down, there's no fall off, which means that light is not going to hit that white wall, and we're going to have a nice, pure, dark, low-key image. Real simple, this one. This one's all about storytelling. Some of my favorite images, and we go back to the one that won us the big award, His Eyes Are Shut. On this one, we can't even see his face, but still a portrait because we're still telling the story. We're telling the story of these tattoos, and I love exploring people's tattoos, and I love seeing the ones that really resonate with them and have a resonation with an audience beyond that. And again, 2 simple triangles working. Lovely to work with shapes in photography, particularly in portraits, and looking and working how shapes work and draw your eye around the frame. Dynamic, simple shapes will always do well in terms of getting people to stop and pay attention, and that's what we try to create here. And there we are, a little close-up one. Loads of detail in there. Again, that one light has captured so much detail in and around the image. I just love the way it's all placed in there. So this next shot is of Alfie. Alfie's a cheeky little dinosaur here, and always challenging shooting very, very young children. I didn't want to shy away from that with this project. So bang, here, image number 4, we have one of those children that will be running around the studio, causing chaos, not listening and doing what they want, which is fine. You've got to give yourself into that. You've got to check your ego at the door. Simple shot here. You imagine I'm stood on the left-hand side here, photographing in to Alfie here. The softbox here is pretty much at a Rembrandt sort of edge here, firing down and into the shot here from the right hand side as we see it. In terms of this, I'm not doing a lot here with Alfie other than I tried a bit of peekaboo, which he was maybe a little bit old for, and then we just start playing, hey, who's got the loudest roar? And I pretend that I've got the loudest dinosaur roar in the room, and then of course Alfie gives me his big roar, and the key is to well, it was very shocking how loud his roar was. I didn't have to pretend at all, but just to sort of fall over backwards at the ferocity of his roar, and then you'll find that their roars get louder and louder, and you get more and more expression. And that's all we're doing here. Again, you gotta when you're shooting kids, you got to get on the floor, you got to roll around, you got to have fun. And as I've said before, you just need to leave that ego to one side and just to have lots of fun there. Lovely little shot here, and again, full of expression. Mum absolutely loves it. And again, the storytelling aspect there of the image. Again, an image there of a child and a portrait, not looking at the camera, looking off camera, giving us something else to consider as it goes through. And I did promise as well that I would share this image here of him with his big sister. Again, this was taken on a one light image with a reflector on the side here, just to bounce a little bit of light in the background that someone stood behind. But what we've done here is we've pulled the white backdrop down from our backdrop stand, and we've cut this in here. This isn't Photoshop layered over the top. We have cut this hole in here. We've rolled these rolls back. We've got the kids behind. They found it loads of fun, and we've got lots of lovely natural expressions from these two absolutely adorable children. Next one here, again, image number 5 of 100. We're only doing 10 today, don't worry. But image number 5 of 100, again, I didn't want to shy away from weddings. I wanted to get into weddings and show you what can be achieved with the one light at a real wedding. And believe me, this was a real wedding. Shot in Portsmouth down at the Square Tower. Very small. It's designed by Henry VIII, this building. So you know what you're dealing with. You're dealing with low ceilings, lots of steps, tiny rooms. And there wasn't a lot of room in here. We couldn't go outside because it was too windy on the day. So we decided to set up the group shots in this small room out the back. Had a curtain for our backdrop, which we kept up. We moved a table in front of the curtain so that the bride and groom and guests could get around it, so they had a point of interest to get to, and then just played around with it from there. As we were setting up this shot for the bridesmaids, we'd done the parents, we'd done all the formalities of that, and I just said, look, quickly get all your bridesmaids in, we'll do a quick bridesmaid shot. And of course, we've put them on the table. We've got them all in nice and close. I'm shooting just sort of like a top third shot here. So from, you know, just above the waist up. So I just want the faces in all close together. I've encouraged the girls to get their faces in close together. And as they've pulled away, someone else's hair has got attached to the bride's veil. This has then led to a little bit of a repair session. And Daisy, the bride in the middle, while all the chaos is going on around her, has just pulled me this look straight into the camera. And that's where our point of interest goes. And again, we're just trying to tell a story, create an image. And this is one of my favorite images from the whole wedding. It's a moment that happened, a moment that cannot be replicated. This is what we try to achieve with social photography. Moments that cannot be replicated, moments in time that are caught and captured forever. And that's what gives images, in my mind, like this, ultimate value, especially on wedding days. Next shot here is of Ravi. Ravi is going into modeling, so he wanted to update his portfolio, so he came to see us. Again, another simple low-key image. We've kept it really simple this time, and as I said right at the start, this is not strictly a one light image. We've brought in a white reflector underneath and to the right hand side here to bounce a little bit of light in, because I wanted to really make the most of this white hair, because it's such a statement, and that's what I wanted him to be showcased with, and that's why I wanted people from modeling agencies to see when they see his portfolio come across his desk. Really simple, again, with the big turtleneck up to the chin, simplifying the whole portrait, no distractions in the background, and just really a simple 1-2. The beauty dish there giving us a nice direct light source just across the face there, and just that little bit of bounce light back in from the reflector. Simple things, simple things. There he is there. Loads of detail in there as well, well captured there with the one light. This one's Nina. Nina came to us. She's a WWE star here in the UK. She came to us for an updated portfolio. We did a whole day session with her and her new character. She has her own show on BT Sport called the Nina Samuel Show. And this shot here, you can see here, there's flicks of pink and flicks of gold all in the background here. And this was a backdrop that we'd made for her out of old used bits of packaging. So we collected all of our packaging up that we'd had from deliveries and painted them different colors. And they're all angular and they're all sort of mismatched in the background to create sort of like a makeshift set, if that makes sense. So that's what we've built in the background here. She is standing, and we've got, again, with the C-stand, we've got a kit softbox, but we've taken the diffuser off the front of it. And what that means is that we've got an even harsher light source, almost like a bare bulb light source, but with a slightly more even spread. And that means that this jawline, and I really wanted to show off Nina's jawline because it's fantastic, and the cheekbones here are really well captured with some strong tonality, and strong tonality here as well in the fabric of the arm here, of the arm piece on this side here, framing the image around. Pinks and golds working well there together, but just a really simple image again with all of the colors there working in unison, and a simple shot without the diffuser on the front. That's the key to that one. Image number 8 here, we're working here with Hannah. Hannah came in as part of a family session. I say a family session, it's a family of 6, but the parents wouldn't be involved. But that's okay, because we've worked with them for a number of years and we know that they won't be involved. That's fine. They want the focus very much to be on the children. They come to us once every couple of years for updated portraits of the children, and we love working with them. We love seeing them grow. We love seeing them develop. Hannah, I've seen her play rugby because she plays in the same age group, but for a different team than my son does, and she's played against my son, and she is one tough cookie. She's just like her mum, hell of a rugby player. I want to do a really simple shot here with her. Again, we've used a blue background here, and if we go into the image a little bit, you'll see a slight bit of tonality to the background. It's not pure black. There's a little hint of blue there, just to work with the blue in the ball and the blue in the shirt. But again, similar to a lighting background, a lighting style that we used previously, 70 centimeter deep soft, but a deep octabox, sorry, up camera right, shooting down. And what we get with that is we get loads of tonality and contrast in the face. Again, a low angle, really similar to Aaliyah's first shot. We've gone for a low angle because I want her to look like an intimidating force on the rugby field. I want her to look like an intimidating presence. And I want these female sports stars to really feel like just like that. I want them to feel like sports stars. I want them to feel like they can go out there and tackle anything and tackle anyone in the world, and give that emphasis to the photo. And that's where my low angles work really well in studio. Great connection with the camera as well, with the eyes here. And as with any of these portraits, you can start guessing where lights are by looking at the eyes. Catch lights in the eyes are the keys. Once you go in close to those, you can see the shape of the softbox, where it's placed, how it's done, and that's your keys as to how a lot of images are photographed. Again, not shying away from things. We're here with Sophia. Sophia's a little baby that came to see us, little newborn, with a simple sort of a really lovely hairband there, actually, really not gimmicky, really simple. And in this image, we haven't turned the photo around at all. She is laying down on a beanbag. We've got a black backdrop that we've pulled down, but we've actually pulled her away from that as well. So there's no fall off, and any spill is sort of feeding straight into black. So it's a nice clean image. But that 70 centimeter deep octabox again is the one that we've used, and we've got that skimming across the face from the other side. So imagine this is Rembrandt lighting with a small triangle on the other side of the face. We are looking at the narrow side of that, the side away from where the light is hitting, the side where all the shadow is, and we've got that intensity looking up. This is a really simple one to do when we've got very young babies that are in need of a rest, or maybe aren't, full of the most smiles. That doesn't mean babies without smiles, does not mean that they are babies without emotion. You can still get emotion, you can still get impact from newborn shoots. It doesn't have to all be about smiles. We are looking for character, and we are looking for statement, and this suits this square crop really nicely here. And there she is, nice and close. Again, lots of detail. And we've used, again, I tend to use in studio around about f11 just to try and maintain as much detail as possible. But as this project continues, we will see you start to experiment a little bit more with depths of field and different techniques here. Lastly, we've got Kelly. Kelly's an amazing swimmer. Swims for the obviously a local club, but is getting towards county level for all of the impact for all of the training that she puts in with those early mornings and weekends. We've got, again, quite a high space here in studio, so we can pour water onto our subjects, and that's what we did here. We've got a balcony above, we've got a small paddling pool. We stand her in the paddling pool. We make sure that the water's nice and warm. We have a little black backdrop that we can just pull down, but again, we're 4 meters away from that backdrop, so there's not a lot of fall off and spill, and we just have her stood there. She just doesn't have to do anything. Goggles on. Now, this kit softbox is about 90 degrees from where the camera is pointing. and her face is pointing 45 degrees between the two. What that means is the reflection of the softbox is bouncing off the goggles, which is bouncing straight back into the lens, which gives us these white, sheer white goggle reflections in the goggles. Now, if we go in super close, we can see, look at the shoulder here. Look how every splash and impact has been caught and frozen in time. That's because we've used the Elinchron 1 to use high speed flash in this instance, because I wanted each one of these droplets to be frozen in time. I wanted to really have an impact and try and do something that our customers can't do. Because if we can do something our customers can't do, that adds value. And if we listen to them and if we create an experience around them, really create an experience around them, really listen to them and really make a big thing of the kids so that they've done something like what they see on the telly. We're running a project, we're running a promotion at the moment where we're trying to get as many footballers in as possible with the Women's Euros on, and we're giving them a Premier League experience for these young footballers. We're making it all about them. We're blowing dry ice into the studio. We're using color. We're getting them to do tricks. We're getting them to pose up so they look like those adverts that they see every time a new kit drops in the Premier League, every time a new signing is announced. We want them to feel like that, because I never had that. I don't know about you, but I never had that. As a kid who played sport, there's not a single photograph that exists of me playing sport. So I wanted to offer that and give that to our customers. This high-speed sync, though, is flawless, and it's given us a unique appeal. The reason why this setup is so important, though, in the first instance, is this is not the final image I was going for. The final image I was going for was a multi-light setup. And with the red on the right, red gel on the right-hand side and the blue gel on the left-hand side, we can create this backlighting for all of the water droplets to be frozen in time at 4,000th of a second. But it's key that we get our key light right first. And that's that main light for the first image. It's key that I get that light right because I want this reflection in the goggles so that the eyes are the brightest part of the picture, so that subconsciously as a viewer, your eyes go straight to the brightest part of the picture. And that is the end result there. Our next 10 feature, these are 9 of the ones that feature on the next 10. So images number 1 through to 20. If you go to my Instagram, you can see these. But again, what I wanted to showcase there for the first 10 was like the basics of what we can achieve with basic lighting and basic softboxes. And we start to get a little bit more complicated in the next 10. We start to look at a little bit, we experiment a little bit with mixing ambient light with off-camera flash outside. We experiment a little bit with color in studio. We experiment a little bit with working with people on location. And we experiment again with high-speed flash. And if the kind people at the Flash Center will have me back, then I'll be happy to take you through the next 10 and the next 10 after that. But if you want the spoilers, they're already up there. I'm loving doing this project, and I'm loving doing it with real customers and real clients to show what can be achieved with just a simple lights, just a simple single light source. It's about getting those fundamentals right. So thank you very much for joining us for this seminar. If you want to, we're going to go through some questions. If we have any questions, you can post them on here. But this is the best ways that you can get in contact with me. If you want to see actual tutorials, really quick tutorials on lighting in my studio, I've got loads of them on my YouTube channel, Portrait of a Wrestler. So youtube.com/portrait of a wrestler. You can follow me on the Instagram at Musselwhite Photo and at Y2 Jim Bob. Those are my 2 Instagram accounts. You got Facebook at Musselwhite Photography, and you also have 2 secret Facebook groups here. So we have Musselwhites. If you look up Musselwhites in Facebook, you'll see a little private group my wife and I set up about basically how to start a studio from scratch. That's what that is. And the Honest Photographer is my come one, come all secret photography group. He says come one, come all, and then he says it's secret. It's ridiculous. But we are going to, I can see some questions now, so we're going to start answering some questions here. From James Marson, how did you get involved with photographing wrestling? So I was struggling for creativity, and I was struggling for a creative project to get my teeth into and to really push myself and do something different and get noticed. I was a bit fed up with lots of people getting noticed, and I wasn't. But then I wasn't shooting anything creatively, so I really had to look at myself. And I tried to contact loads of wrestlers to photograph, and after 6 months, I counted them, I'd sent out 100 emails, and I'd had no replies. I was feeling a bit down. And then I saw an article about a wrestler in my local newspaper, and I did it old school. Instead of sending emails, I phoned up the editorial desk of the newspaper, and I said, could I speak to this gentleman in the article, please? And they said, well, we can't give you his number, but we'll give him yours. So I said yes, and 5 minutes later, my phone rang, and this gentleman called Chris came in. He was on the other end of the line, and he said, I understand you need models. I'm a wrestler, I'll do it. So I went and picked him up and shot him, and then he introduced me to someone else because he liked the experience, because I made sure that everyone that comes from my studio has the best experience possible. He introduced me to another person, that person introduced me to another person, that person introduced to another person, and next thing I know, we have a project, and we're off to the races. I'm really, really lucky with it because I've met lots of people, I've experienced lots of things, gone to lots of places, and hopefully I think had a positive impact on people's careers in terms of getting them noticed by bigger companies and getting them jobs at bigger companies, and also documenting a scene, you know, for a moment in time, really, that can't be replicated, what I go back to previously. It's really good because I work with young creative people. I still keep in contact with a few of them, and those young creative people always say yes to my ideas, or have ideas of their own that I like to see come to fruition. And I think that's one of my, I think identifying what skills you have as part of a team is really important. My skill is not in conceiving ideas. I can't do that. My wife did all of the drawings for this seminar of the lighting diagrams, because I just can't do that. I can't be given a blank piece of paper and create something. But what I am able to do is take someone else's idea and collaborate with them, and I can always make that better. I think that's what I can do. So almost all of the images I'm really, really proud of that I've shot are collaborative pieces. And the people that I collaborate with deserve just as much credit for them as I do. Hello, Graham. Bell, great tutorial. Do you also use multiple lights? Yeah, loads. I mean, I simplified my lighting maybe 10 years ago because I was shooting in a loft conversion in my home. And that loft conversion had no space whatsoever, had sloping ceilings, you could only just about stand up in the middle. And we had to get families. I think my biggest family was a family of 16 that I had up there. And because of that, there's no room for lights, and there's also kids running around, and you've got a floor-based studio rather than a ceiling-based studio with loads of leads. So I wanted to simplify it as much as possible. But I'll sell the story, and I'll say it again. Maybe 20 years ago, I was working at that high street studio, and it was my first ever job, and I went into that studio. I'd never used a strobe before. So this was around about 2003. I'd never used a strobe light before. And within a week, I was shooting in there because they were so desperate for staff. And they'd nailed the lights into the walls, and they'd nailed all the settings into the lights. And they said, don't touch anything, just turn it on in the morning and make sure they have fun and go. And I did that. And my sessions obviously started making money, and I thought after 6 months that I'd completed photography and I was the best photographer on the planet. So I started adding lights where there weren't any lights. I foraging around in like the cupboards, and I found 12 lights. I got them all out for this couple shoot, and I used 12 lights to light an image. And I took it to my next assessment, my next national assessment day, where all of the photographers around the country would come and bring their best image of the month, and it would be assessed in front of everyone. And I was so confident, I went up first, and the person who assessed my 12 light portrait tore it to pieces on the posing, the composition, the lighting, the digital processing, the feeling, the emotion, the cropping, the print quality, everything. And he ended his assessment after 10 minutes in front of everyone, in front of all my peers, saying, why are you trying to use 12 lights when you don't even understand how to use one? And I'm still trying to find different ways to use one light. And that's part of this project as well. Is in the last 6 months, with everything that was 20 years of working in this industry, in the last 6 months, I've still found new ways to work with one light. And that's, you know, that's really, really important to me. And it's important to continue learning. It really is. It's important to continue learning, but learn what is important and is of value to you, you know, because there's lots out there and lots of people trying to get you to learn from them. So just be careful be selective with what you want to learn. I'm very grateful that everyone's come on here tonight to learn. I hope you've learned something anyway. Linda, hey James, what diffuser do you use? Okay, yeah, I mean, so there's lots of answers to that question. I mean, generally when I talk about diffusers, I mean a diffuser on the front of the softboxes, so like the white sheet that goes over the front. A lot of my favorite softboxes have a double diffuser. So the 70 centimeter Octabox has a double diffuser. So that will go through 2 layers and give you a really, really, really soft light. I do have a diffuser downstairs as well, which is like a 5-in-1 reflector. So it's a 1 meter circle with like a transparent white film as a main bit, and you can use that in sunlight so that it diffuses the light coming through. But then the sleeve of it has a black side, a silver side, a white side, and a gold side. And I bought that off of eBay for £3 10 years ago, and I still use it every day. In fact, I use it in a shoot this afternoon. Before I answer some more questions, this Elinchron 1, by the way, which I've got here, which is really, really smart, like I've said, I'll just showcase to you how, like, if you can see my video, I don't know if you get, no one's actually said they can or not. That touch screen is all slidey. It's really, really cool. I love it. 20% off these. If you go onto the website, they are 20% off today. And I honestly, you can buy these things with like, you know, like other light sources and stuff that have got batteries and have got leads and have got all this. That's it. That's what you buy for it. And that thing will sync up with your camera, and it's reliable as hell. It's got a really good battery on it as well. It's easy to charge. It's just a C-port recharging. I've not been given anything to say about it. I'm just telling you what I think of it. And I think it's really cool. And 20% off is a steal, frankly. Next, thanks for the great presentation. I appreciate that. And I apologize if I got your pronunciation wrong, Kayvan, but I hope that's right. What's the power of the Elinchron compared to a speedlight? I'm okay, full clarity. I will never ever try and answer a question I don't know the answer to, and I don't technically know what the answer is to that question. Compared to my Canon speedlight, I don't think it's less powerful. At least it doesn't seem to me. I've used it outside on a sunny day, and I've got it to overpower the sun. It is possible to do that, you know, within reason. It's not so. Yeah, I mean, and it's got a reasonably large. I think it's got like a 5-stop range to it. So I found it. I've just found it really, really, I've just found it really, really good and really reliable. And I wouldn't fiddle about with, because the problem with going between different, like I've always, again, complete cards on the table, complete honesty. I've always shot Elinchron. I've shot Elinchron for 20 years. Except for that small time when I was shooting Portrait for Resto, where I was using my speed light. The problem with the speed light is that I have to buy like a third-party adapter for it, and then a third-party softbox for it, and then I have to remember all these different things. Whereas when you actually just work off of one brand, like I've always shot Canon, so I only ever need to use Canon lenses, and I've always shot Elinchron, so I only ever need to really worry about Elinchron modifiers, which are really good, and the Elinchron transmitter as well. So it's about sort of simplifying that process as much as it is like, you know, worrying about power and things like that. And I think this is the first release of the Elinchron 1. So, you know, it's only likely to get even better from here on in, I guess, with sort of firmware updates and things like that. What Canon camera, this is from Jack. What Canon camera do I shoot with and why? I can answer that question. I'll take you through my entire Canon history if you like. 300D first, because it was the only one I could afford. 400D because I really, really like the shutter noise on the 400D, and the 400D still has the best shutter noise that I've had of any Canon camera. I then upgraded to a 30D because I got one really, really cheap, and it was a slightly bigger, but it's my first big body camera, so it's bigger than the 400D. It meant I could get taken seriously at weddings. Then I upgraded to the 70 because I had a video function. and was a reasonable price, and is still a beast of a camera, the 7D. I still really enjoy shooting with the 7D. Then I had a 5D Mark II because everyone was shooting 5D Mark IIs and I thought I was missing out. Then I just traded that in for a 5D Mark III because I really did the 5D Mark II. There was a massive jump between what the 5D Mark II and the 5D Mark III could do in terms of noise quality. And then I shot with the Mark III for years. I took the Mark III to Las Vegas. I shot with the Mark III in New Orleans and Chicago. I shot with it everywhere. My latest camera now, and I'm thinking about chucking all of this in, is the one you can see me on tonight, which is the R6. So I've gone mirrorless now, and I went mirrorless during lockdown, and I don't think I'd really go back. I've got real sentimentality towards my 7D and my 5Ds, but I just think for practicality and for the functionality of the back of it, and for the video work that I'm getting out of it as well, I'm doing a little bit of video work at the moment. The R6 is really, really good. I don't need to go up to the R5 because I don't need the megapixels on the back of the camera because I don't shoot for billboards that often. That's a little joke, but so that's why, and that's why I shoot with those. And with regards to bodies, the money is in lenses. So if you are making investments in cameras, put your money in your lens, invest in glass, don't worry too much about bodies. Your lens is going to be cool, but do make a decision now whether you're going to go, DSLR or mirrorless. Don't be like me and shoot one of each. Can you say more about using the Elinchron one in HSS mode? I can, Will. It's completely intuitive. I've not had to think about it too much. So with a lot of other flash units I've had to change the transmitter mode to speed, or I've had to change the mode in the flash unit to speed to sort of suit, and then hope they all sync up. It's been completely intuitive. So as soon as I switch it to a higher shutter speed on my camera, the transmitter, the Elinchron transmitter at the top of the Skyport, talks to the Elinchron 1, and it just all works, which is great, especially when I'm working outside on sunny days or I'm trying to balance light out. I've shot a project recently. It's a project quite early stages of, but we're shooting runners, photographing runners, and it was a really, really sunny day last week when we shot them. And again, we used the sun as a kicker on the back of the neck, and we had a lovely sky, and we got all the in-camera stuff right first. It's what we do when I'm outside. I get all the in-camera stuff right first. I know where my light's going to be. I know how it's going to hit the subject, but I make sure that my kicker light or any ambient light is okay, and that the sky mainly is a thing that's painted really, really deep hues. And then I just adjust my flash, to suit that setting. And I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to do much maths, which is a shame because I do understand all that. But it gives me one less thing to worry about, which is good. Is only using one light source a personal choice, or is it about ease of mobility or location? Do you sometimes use a second and or third strobe? Oh, cheers, Sean. Yeah, I mean, I've alluded to this previously in this seminar. It is a personal choice. I start with one. I tend to start with one and then work up, because okay, so here's the thing. If you're relatively new to strobes, and again, I'm coming at it from the perspective of someone who's been working with strobes now for 20 years. So I can kind of guess what's going wrong if anything goes wrong, okay? When you're working with strobes and you're relatively new to it, if you set yourself up a 4-light setup, so 2 kickers, a fill light and a key light, say you just did that, right? 2 kickers, fill light, key light, and you shoot and something isn't right, you've got to unpick 4 things to work out what's not going right. Way easier to start with 1 light, start with your key light, take that shot, work with that a bit, move that light around with it, work with it a bit, work out the feel of it, work out the rhythm of it. Then you add your second light. And if something isn't wrong, it's the second light because your first light was fine. And then you add and you add and you add. The point about lighting is that you're trying to do things that accentuate and tell a story. You're trying to create a portrait that has mood and that has impact. And that's another thing as well. So come on to this, is that a lot of photographers, and I've suffered from this in the past as well, don't get frustrated when other people don't see in their image what they see in their image. And what you've got to remind yourself is that if you took a landscape or something, I don't know, say landscape's a good example. Is it a good example? I'll go with landscape, then I'll do the baby example. If you're on a landscape, you remember that walk and you remember how it felt, you remember how it looked, you remembered how high up you got, you remember what the wind felt like in your face, you remember how you waited for the right light. But that may not necessarily come to someone who wasn't there, who didn't feel that, because it hasn't come across in the image. You're going at it with a slightly biased eye when you first look at it. And it happens with babies. If you shoot a baby and you've worked really hard to calm the baby down and get it in the right position, you've had patience and you've worked well with the mother, and you finally got to that point where the baby's asleep and you take the picture. I see in that shot, when I've worked with a mum, I see work and effort and resilience. But to anyone else, it's just a sleeping baby, So you're trying to, and with that in mind, you're trying to, whenever you add a light or take a light away, you're trying to create a scene, create interest. And there's a reason why you've used a separation light. There's a reason why you've used a fill light, to highlight things. There's a reason why you've taken it away and you used a slightly deeper softbox to accentuate shadows. You're trying to tell stories all the time and trying to do different things. So there's no right or wrong. It's just varying degrees of what you're trying to achieve, and impact, and getting a viewer to see what you see in a picture, or make a judgment call on a picture, or ask questions about a picture is the ultimate goal, really, in photography. I call them scroll stoppers. If you stop scrolling your phone, if a picture makes you stop scrolling your phone on Instagram, it's probably a good one. Let's go with this. So I do sometimes use more lights, but for this project, we're only using one. In answer to your question, Paul has asked, we might wrap it up after Paul. I have an Elinchrom 5-foot octa. Could I get the same effect that you get from your small octa? Is that 5 foot or 5 inches? It's got to be 5 foot, hasn't it? So that 5-foot octa is about the size of a small adult. So the thing about modifiers to remember is that the modifier generally is suitable to shoot a thing that it is the same size as. So your 5-foot octa is great for full-length portraits because you're going to get even light across pretty much an entire human body. If a human body's 6 foot, 5 foot, it's about as big as you're going to get. So it's going to be even top to bottom. If you tried to shoot that with a smaller octa, you get fall off. The only way to eliminate fall off would be to bring the light further away from the subject so the distribution of the light is wider. But what that does is it makes the light source harder, which gives you harsher shadows. It's not quite as nice. That's why we use those sorts of things. What was the question? Let's just, could I get the same? No, you can't get the same, you can't get exactly the same effect. That's the point, because the different modifiers create different looks, different feels to a picture. So every time you change something, if you change a big octa to a small octa, it's going to change the look and the feel of the picture. Principally with that, in that instance, it's going to change the spread and therefore the fall off of the light in the image, which give a completely different feel. But if you're shooting full length pictures, or you want super soft lighting, because a lot of people use those 5-foot octas for newborn portraits because there's massive margin for error and it's very, very soft lighting and it's very, very pleasing for the current style of newborn photos, especially when it's feathered, then you can do that. I can't believe 53 people have made it this far. I'm honestly, I'm always overwhelmed when I do these things. So